This is actually the last video that we're going to be doing on this topic of why God allows pain and suffering. Okay, it's the last that we're using, or we're going to be referencing Dr. Charles Stanley, some of his comments on it. We're going to be moving into a different topic coming up. Next time around, we'll be taking a look at gaslighting. But today we wanted to spend some time with this thing about pain and suffering and why God allows it. So one of the things that we're going to be considering in the short clip that we have for today is that God allows pain and suffering in our lives for the outcomes that he knows that he's seeking through our pain and suffering. Now, this gets a little bit complicated to process sometimes. And so, I hope to be able to make it as clear as possible. But if not, we will probably come back around to it in a future broadcast and talk more about that. So let's just go ahead and we'll jump in and see what we can learn today. Hello, Karen. How are you doing today?
Oh, pretty good. How about you?
It's good. It's always good to see you, and it's always good to have you here with me on these broadcasts. So,
Yeah.
that how about, and this is just completely off the cuff, but I'm sure that you appreciate that. But how about for you, when you look back on these in the number of, these various broadcasts that we've done with respect to this topic of pain and suffering, how about for you? Are there any big takeaways or any benefits, even if you speak in general terms about it?
Yeah, I think that probably for me, it's like the biggest is the overall is that there's kind of two sides to the coin of pain and suffering is,
Yeah.
and part of it is what your perspective is. But yeah, I would say that it's easy to get locked in on the unpleasant parts of it,
Yeah.
and it takes a lot more work to be able to see that there are benefits to suffering and pain.
It takes a lot more work to get beyond betrayal. hence, hence the name of this project.
Yeah, right.
I really believe that. Matter of fact, I just interviewed a guy yesterday, or maybe the day before. I can't remember for sure. And he was molested by his male babysitter when he was 5 years old.
Wow.
And as a result of that, he was suicidal from that time on
Wow.
until he became a Christian at age 25. You know what I think I will do is that I think I'm going to post his story in our Beyond Betrayal group, because even though I'm developing a different project with some of these folks that I'm talking to, for the name of that project is Why Think Differently. And in our culture is that there's a lot of pressure to think a particular way, but about life and about God and about faith and about Jesus and about morality and all of that stuff. But I want to challenge people to think differently. And he has come through on the other side. That's so wonderful. That's such a wonderful message to hear, that you can get to the other side regardless of the tragedy and the pain and suffering that you've experienced,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but
How about for you? What's takeaway from this series?
okay, one of the big things for me is that I just noticed that I scrolled over something and made it go out of whack. There's just so many buttons. Okay, the big takeaway is that God doesn't want us to experience pain and suffering.
Mm-hmm.
But he knows that because we are living in a fallen world,
Yeah.
surrounded by fallen people, and that we're broken people ourselves, that we are going to experience, we're going to experience horrible pain and suffering. But when, and there's a big difference between God's perfect will, what God would have, that he, if God had it his way, seriously, if he had it his way, there would be no pain or suffering.
Yeah.
But because we wanted it our way,
Mm-hmm.
there is pain and suffering. And not only natural evil, but also moral evil. So in other words, not only the evil that we find in creation, getting old or disease or whatever else, but also moral evil, where, and if you stop and think about moral evil, that it's really the vast majority of the evil that we suffer,
Yeah.
But so God doesn't want it, but God will use it for his good purposes in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And particularly, and I know that is hard to process, because when I used to hear that stuff, there was kind of like parts of it that didn't compute. But
Yeah.
Because I wanted a God who would shield me,
Mm-hmm.
protect me from all hurt,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody gets a free pass in life like that.
Right.
So how do we square that God didn't protect me from hurt, and so how has God failed me? I think that the solution to that, and we can talk about this. I know that you wanted to talk about some of this in a future broadcast, but the solution to that is we have to ask ourselves, what type of God do we serve? And if God is all good, and that if he's all powerful, and if he's all loving, then God knows how to accomplish his good and loving purposes for our lives through the pain that we suffer.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and that's a lot to unpack. There's just a whole lot there, and it's actually taken me a long, long time, but to kind of like figure out some of that stuff. But and I've had the help of some extremely gifted people who helped me to kind of like walk through that. But
Yeah.
I think that we need what Christians might say is a more robust theology of pain, or a more robust theology of suffering. And most of the people that you hear on TV or whatever is that they kind of like have this approach to it, is that if you just believe enough that you won't experience that,
Yeah.
And
Like a
good-
prosperity gospel kind of.
Yeah. Believe it and you'll receive it. Good things are coming your way. All your dreams are coming true, and that your breakthrough is just after your breakdown, and all of those, and some of those statements are true, but they also give people a false impression about God. Now, that was a long answer
Yeah.
to your short question. So let's watch the video, okay?
All right.
Here we go.
What do you want to do in me and through me that this pain and this suffering is a part of the preparation? Well, remember this. Pain and suffering will either make us better, or the wrong response, it'll make you bitter. And you do not want that in your life. Remember, God has a purpose. He didn't say I'd understand it. He does have a purpose, and he'll turn it for your good if you will respond in a matter of thanksgiving and praise, even though you don't understand it. That's not the issue. He didn't say I'd understand it. He says trust him, and he'll turn it for your good.
Yeah, that's good. I think he's right on, and there's really a lot there. What are some takeaways that you had when you watched that clip?
Yeah. I mean, I love it will either make you better or it'll make you bitter. because I think that that's true. Like our response is how two people can go through the same situation and come out of it with two different ways of handling it and
Mm-hmm.
perspectives. But
Mm-hmm.
I also like what he's talking about with as far as God and trusting Him, and I think um, that we have to ask ourselves really, like I think with Christians, that when it comes to pain and suffering, do you trust God? Because
Yeah.
it's one thing to be like, yeah, I trust God when everything's going well. But when you're going through pain and suffering, do you really trust that God is good and that He has a good plan and that His good
Mm-hmm.
plan includes your current situation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 You know, there's a great passage of scripture in the book of Romans, and I was preaching about a little bit about this on Sunday, and it's in Romans 8 where it talks about God is for us. I think that might be like verse number 31. I can't remember for sure, but I'm
Hmm.
going to see if I can see it real quick here. And that God is for us. And forgive me if I talked about this before, because it's hard for me to keep track of who I say what to. but
Yeah.
but let me just read that real quick. And it's in Romans 8, and in verse 31, I think that's where it's at. There it is. Yeah, it says, what shall we say about such wonderful things as these? If God is for us, who can ever be against us?
Hmm.
And of course, what he's talking about there is a believer who has made a commitment to Christ. And
Hmm.
that, and by the way, God is for everybody,
Yeah.
but it's kind of like you only find yourself under the cover of his blessings and grace when you have responded to that in your
Yeah.
life, and so and it is a severe mercy of him to
Hmm.
allow to not allow us to not allow the wrong paths that we've chosen for ourselves to work. I mean, it's a severe mercy for him to say, okay, if you want to go down that path, you can, but I'm not going to make
Yeah.
it work for you. you know,
Right.
you know, you know.
Yeah.
In that there's another passage, that trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all
Hmm.
your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. You know,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
But what we're talking about here is it says, what shall we say about such wonderful things as these? If God is for us, then who can be against us? Then what happens in the balance of that chapter, he goes through all of this stuff that are good things and horrible things,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
And so God doesn't protect us, but he
Hmm.
has, he doesn't protect us from all hurt.
Hmm.
But he has our best interests at heart through those
Yeah.
hurts, and he can leverage that to our benefit,
Yeah.
you know. So
Yeah.
it goes back to this whole question about whether or not that we really truly believe deep down in our being that God is good and he's loving.
Yeah. For
You
sure.
know, yeah. So
Yeah.
I liked what Dr. Stanley said in that passage of scripture too, is that even if we don't understand God's good purposes, you know, probably when you were growing up, you didn't understand the good purposes that your parents had for you.
Hmm. I don't know if sometimes they understood it.
Yeah, that's true. And actually, the Bible even says that our earthly fathers disciplined us as they thought best.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, and sometimes their judgment about how to guide us is flawed,
Right. Yeah.
horribly flawed. But then
Yeah.
that same passage says that, but God disciplines us for our good, that we may
Mm.
share in His holiness. You know,
Yeah.
and so and it's not like, you're so bad, I'm going to beat you into goodness. That's not what God is doing. He says
Right.
that He is. That word holiness is really off-putting to a lot of people because it has such kind of like religious connotations, holier than thou type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But what if we exchanged that word holiness for wholeness?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
and so what God is trying to do, He's trying to bring us into wholeness in our lives.
Right.
You know, and not only in our personal lives, but also how we conduct our relationships with others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I do think that failed relationships, whether they are in marriage or in employment situations or
Mm-hmm.
friendships,
Mm-hmm.
can be a valuable learning experience for us to grow in our wholeness.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
tell me some of your thoughts.
Yeah. It definitely can help you to depend more on God as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, you know, uh, it wasn't really until I became a mom that I started relating a little bit more to, you know, uh, the difficulties that it must be for God to have to do some of these things and navigate some of the things that we go through and
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And I think, in every relationship there are a lot of challenge. There's challenges.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that my hardest relationships are the ones that I'm the most close to.
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, it takes a lot of work, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of struggling a little bit to put it into words, but I do think that God cares a lot about us, and that He is working through all of these situations to, like you said, bring us to wholeness,
Mm-hmm.
refine us, and uh, help us to grow and to be better. I think it does mean we have to stay on the right road, though.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a phenomenon out there called free range parenting. Have you heard of that?
Like free range chickens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are they grass fed?
Yeah. Free free range parenting is just kind of like, parents who just cut their kids loose and let them find their
Yeah,
own way. You know,
yeah,
the problem with that is that it's making the assumption that, first of all, that the people out there in the world are going to be safe for your kids to be in contact with.
hmm
You know, but also is that you don't have anything, that you don't really have any structure to offer them in their lives.
yeah.
You know.
Well, it also you're assuming that the child knows better than what you do.
Well, in a lot of families, that's the way it ends up being, isn't it? You know.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if they feel the same way when it comes to like playing in the street. Oh yeah, just let them
Yeah.
decide what they want to do. I
Mm,
think that it's like it only goes so far.
of
They
course.
they kind of use it to be uh, not have to really put work into their raising of their kid or whatever. But
Hmm.
you know, the kid
Yeah.
can't make all the decisions on their own and come out okay.
No, and I think that actually that that discipline is a product of love.
Yeah.
And we see that with God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What he's trying to do is to help us to share in his wholeness.
Mm-hmm.
God is complete and whole within himself. And he wants us to move in the next step, in the next phase towards our own maturity, growth, and development. And that's true not only personally, but also in our relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're going to be hosting a webinar coming up here soon about drivers training.
Yeah.
And negotiating the freeways of conflict without getting into a collision. I'm telling you, so many couples need that because they have never seen it modeled in a healthy way in the homes in which they grew up.
Right. Yeah.
And,
Not only that, I mean, even if you did have a good model, is that you both are bringing your experiences and your, own desires and hopes and dreams and all that into it. And there's expectations and all sorts of stuff. And yeah, life doesn't go the way we think it's going to go.
and marriage doesn't go the way we think it's going to go.
Yeah.
And parenting doesn't go the way that we think it's going to go.
Right.
And our jobs, I could go on and on. Hey, before we wrap up here, is there anything that you'd like to share? Any additional observations? Like we say, that this is going to be the last time. But how about for you? Let me just ask you really quickly. As you've been doing some of the research for this series on gaslighting that we're going to be doing, have you found that to be helpful?
Yeah, it's definitely been helpful. I think it's kind of surprising to me how easy it is to fall into that trap. And I mean, I can speak from experience on that, as I've had a couple of situations where I was involved in. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of things that I feel like are worthy of exploring, not only just like, well, explaining and unpacking a little bit what gaslighting is, but also how to spot it, some examples of it, and then some things
What
that
you
you
can
can
do
do.
about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be great. Cool. All righty. Well, thank you again, Karen, for joining me with this. And I'm looking forward to our gaslighting series coming up, as well as our webinar.
Sounds good.
Cool. So, folks, you can find access to some of our resources there on beyondbetrayal.org. But really, what I would encourage you to do is join our Facebook group, because it's a private Facebook group, and we post material, we post resources there all the time, as much as we're able to, and we're going to continue to develop those resources for that group. So, check that out. And also, we're going to be announcing our webinar coming up, and you don't want to miss out on that. I'm excited about that, so I hope you will be too. So that's it for now. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.